Carmelite nun who wrote to Merton about dry prayer in 1953. He responded, "What is valuable in prayer is simply what is real here and now. The present reality is the reflection of an eternal reality, and through the present we enter into eternity." Now, sometimes when your prayer goes dry, it's good and praiseworthy to look at some real created thing and feel and appreciate its reality. A flower, a tree, the woods, or even a person. And then in parentheses he wrote, "But there you have to be very careful." This was in 1953. Just let the reality of what is real sink into you, and you find your soul spontaneously begins to pray again. For through real things we can reach the one who is infinitely real. You know that within the silence of your own soul, Jesus is present. Present in a way that is too perplexing to be talked about, and it would embarrass you extremely even to try. So prayer, according to Thomas Merton, is not some isolated department of life that we do in the morning and the evening and before and after meals. It is rather the realization of the Godward potential inherent in every moment of every life. Prayer, for Merton, is in no way to be connected with forms of prayer. Forms of prayer, he says, are necessary and dangerous, because we can think that the prayers we say is the praying. Prayers are the means and not the end. Merton warns us, it's a risky thing to pray, and the danger is that our very prayers get between God and us. The great thing in prayer is not to pray, but to go directly to God. If saying your prayers is an obstacle to prayer, just go directly to God. Let Jesus pray. Forget yourself. Enter the prayer of Jesus praying in you. Let prayer pray within you, whether you know it or not. And this means a deep awareness of our true inner identity. Our lives are hidden with Christ in God. So when our prayers go dry, disappoint us, and appear to accomplish nothing, as they inevitably do, Merton's suggestion is not to work harder at it or to find any new spiffy technique. Rather, he urges a more expansive human experience. For just as an artist creates beauty from the power of the life he assimilates, so a contemplative achieves communion with God because life in him is becoming more expansive and seeking further life. But, Merton says, it comes only to those who are poor enough in spirit, empty enough in the center, to cry out for life. He writes, prayer and love are really learned in the hour when prayer becomes impossible and your heart turns to stone. In prayer, Merton says, we discover what we already have, and you realize on the journey that you're already there. We have everything, but we don't know it and we don't experience it, he says. So start where you are and deepen what you already have, and you realize you are already there. Everything has been given to us in Christ. All we need is to experience what we already possess. The trouble is, he says, we aren't taking the time to do so. And the reason why we don't take time is a feeling that we have to keep moving. This is a real sickness, he says. The whole thing boils down to giving ourselves in prayer a chance to realize that we have what we seek and we don't have to rush after it. It is there all the time, and if we give it time in solitude and silence, it will make itself known to us. There is, in all of this contemplative journeying in prayer, a sense of the unfolding of mystery in time, a reverence for gradual growth in us. And this breakthrough into what you already have, Merton says, this breakthrough into what you already have is only accomplished through the complete acceptance of the cross at some point on your journey. There is no other way home. There is no other way around the cross if you want to come to the true self. Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical, Jesus Christ Superstar, places our Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, in the deepest contemplative prayer, facing the cross. Can this song be your song and mine? Number 15.
If there is a
The final section will be a bit abbreviated because of the hour. The final section is the place of the desert, the place of solitude and silence, which are essential if anyone is going to hear the call to the contemplative journey toward the true self. Solitude and silence were at the very core of Merton's person, his vocation, and he would say, of ours as well. In actual fact, he wrote, society depends for its existence on the inviolable personal solitude of its members. Society, to merit its name, must be made up not of numbers or mechanical units, but of persons. To be a person implies responsibility and freedom, and both of these imply a certain interior solitude. When society is made up of persons who know no interior solitude, it can no longer be held together by love, and consequently it is held together by a violent and abusive authority. The ears with which one hears the message of the gospel are hidden in our heart, and these ears do not hear anything unless they are favored with a certain interior solitude and silence. For silence is related to love, and silence teaches us to know reality by respecting it where words have defiled it. Solitude and silence, Merton warns, should not be chosen for their own sake. We don't go into solitude and silence because we don't like other people, he says. If you do, you're in deep trouble. Solitude and silence are chosen as part of the journey toward wholeness because they are for the sake of deeper and richer communion with other people, not separation from them. Deeper communion with creation and with the Creator. Plunged in the depths, deepest of solitudes, we find that there are others out there, but that there is only the person in the unity of perfect love, which is God. Merton wrote, "It is necessary that we find the silence of God not only in ourselves, but in one another. It is not speaking that breaks silence, but the anxiety to be heard." In the silence and the solitude, which are the desert conditions for contemplative living, Merton says, the inner self, like a shy, wild animal, shows itself. Whereas in the presence of a stranger, the inner self, shy animal, hides. But in this silence, Merton believed that we are as before the creation of language. We begin to recover the capacity to listen, especially to God. For unless we learn to listen in silence, he says, we shall have nothing worth saying. Our lives are so cluttered with words that we no longer know how to handle silence. For our society, silence is simply a fruitless pause between words, rather than a creative moment out of which deep and authentic words may emerge. As Merton observed, if our life is poured out in useless words, we will never hear anything. We'll never become anything. And in the end, because we have said everything before we had anything to say, we shall be left speechless. The silence which humanizes us, according to Merton, is the silence which emerges from a growing reverence for life and for others. As we grow toward human maturity and care for the life of others, we can become creatively and beautifully silent. We evoke words from the other and generate life by our listening to the other. The silent person, Merton says, is not the one who never speaks, but the one who knows how to listen well. The truest solitude that Merton writes about and discovered in his own experience. The truest solitude, he says, is not something outside you, not some physical place you create. No, the truest solitude is an abyss opening up in the center of your own soul. And this abyss of interior solitude is a hunger that will never be satisfied by any created thing. The only way to find solitude is by hunger and thirst and sorrow and poverty and desire. And the one who has found solitude is empty, as if he'd been emptied by death. Yet it is in this loneliness that the deepest activities begin. A life of contemplative prayer is, Merton believed, most of all, just a life. But it is life that is truly a life lived in such a way that we come to realize that whatever you do, every act, however small, can teach you something, provided you see who it is that is acting in every moment of your lives. At the center of our being is a point of nothingness, he wrote. A point of nothingness which is untouched by falseness and sin and illusion. A point of pure truth. A point or spark which belongs entirely to God. A point which is never at our disposal, and a point from which God disposes of our lives. A point which is inaccessible to the fantasies of our own mind or the brutalities of our will. This little point of nothingness, this true self, this absolute poverty is the pure glory of God in us. Merton says, I have no program for seeing this point of nothingness. It is only given. Yet, the gate of heaven is everywhere. Come with me, Merton wrote. Come with me to the palace of nowhere, where all the many things of the world are one. It is in the prayer Jesus taught us that the reign of God, where the many things of the world become one, is celebrated prayerfully. I invite you to stand. To bring forward into your consciousness whatever Merton's words have unearthed in you tonight about that point of nothingness, that center where God is all in all. And rejoice with that gift, praying with me as Jesus taught us, in song, of course.
That concludes our formal program this evening. If you'd like to chat with Father Collins for a few minutes, he would be glad to talk to you.